Cool. Thank you for inviting me here today. Yes, my name is Rob Lancashire. I work for the Oakland Group over in the UK. I've been in and around data for about 19 years now, working in different industries, and have firsthand seen like the massive changes we've seen happening all over all these industries over time. This slide's like king of the buzzwords slides, but obviously what we've seen, and you'll all have experienced it, and as someone said this to me the other day, is everyone's doing a transformation at the moment. Everyone's doing a digital or data transformation. Some people know about it, some people don't, but it's happening absolutely everywhere at the moment. And these things are happening because of the cloud, the rise of the internet data, everything going online, more and more event data. So we're just getting really, really saturated with data absolutely everywhere, and that's driven this regulation that need for businesses as well. So data has obviously become really important. I know I'm speaking to people that know all about that at the moment, but we also know that despite all this exciting opportunity that's available for everybody, some people are going flying with it. Some people are still stuck in a world where over that 19 years, the best they've managed to achieve is going from 65,000 rows in Excel to 1 million rows, because they're just not being able to keep up with all this change, and they don't quite understand why. We're seeing lots and lots of challenges to becoming data driven. Okay? Everybody wants to do it, but we all know that data is just everywhere, siloed, and people keep their own bits of data in their own drives. Even the data that we do have well organized in systems might not talk to another system, and you can't find out who owns one system and who owns a different system. So actually trying to make value out of this data is really difficult when it's siloed. Obviously, that leaves onto data quality issues. If you can't access that data, you might have it duplicated all over the place. You might be making decisions based on the wrong data because it's not the source of truth. And it then goes on to impact your decision-making process. We're also seeing lack of skills. So the data, sort of, like we say, what's available to us has changed so much that even for us as data professionals, trying to keep on top of all those changes has been really difficult, because there's always something new coming out and you're trying to figure out whether you need it or not. The people in business that aren't on the forefront of that data change, that's even more difficult. They've probably inherited things like Excel processes, inherited files, and they've been doing the same thing for a long time. And actually learning those new skills is really difficult on top of a day job that is doing something else. That leads on to data culture. Everybody wants a data culture, but actually trying to achieve that again is really difficult. People aren't moving on from their old things, and you know what? Businesses have their own cultures, and within those cultures, they have their own subcultures. And whether people are willing and able to collaborate, share data, and work on different things, just is really different all over the place in business. That leads into a lack of engagement. So a lot of things are happening, and a lot of changes happening in the digital landscape and the data landscape, but it's happening to people rather than with people. And so we don't get quite the engagement we need from business people, because we're putting things on them. We're not necessarily helping them move on themselves and driving it based on their needs, which ultimately comes back to this inability to deliver value. If we can't get the data we need, it's not the quality needed. If we don't have the skills, we don't have the culture, we don't have the engagement, then we can't drive the value we need. And that's shown, I think there's an old Gartner stat, but something like 85% of data programs fail to deliver the full value they were intending to drive. And what we still see quite a lot of at the moment is this, in part, starts because a lot of the drive is a technology drive. We've got some great new systems, new process, new ways of doing things with technology, which are put into place because of the best intentions. So it's not that people are buying things and just, let's see what this does. Actually, they're trying to solve a problem. They've identified a problem. They've identified some technology that says it will solve the problem, and so they're going with that. And then what they don't tend to consider as much is how do you get the people understanding it, how to get the people trained, how do you give them the right skills, and how do you get them the right processes to know they're looking at the right time, at the right thing, and they're managing the right processes together. So we don't see this full end-to-end thinking of people, process, technology. We tend to see that being driven more from the technology point of view. So this has led to a real rise in the importance of data governance. So of data management we've got on the one hand, and data governance is then how we get those people and processes into place to support what we're doing in the data management space. Data governance at its best covers a lot of things. So first of all, it should make sure your data strategy and your data governance strategy is closely aligned to what your business is trying to achieve. It should make sure you have the right policies in place to really utilize the data, to make sure people can access the right data, that it's secure, and that we understand the quality and the quality at the level that we need. And that leads on to standards and quality, just make sure we understand actually what we are trying to achieve with data quality and focusing on the right things, and that we have the right data architecture standards in place as well. It leads, it gives us oversight of what's happening, so observation and audits about what's happening, and puts the right people in place to manage that data as well from a business sense, not from an IT sense, but bringing the right people from the business. It ensures we're complying, it ensures we look at issues, we don't just record them, but we've actually got people in place and managing them. And it also helps us get sponsorship for data management projects from outside of our IT and data functions, that we've got business people sponsoring, and that we also understand the value of all these things. So we've got all these things that we're delivering value on: quality, security, making sure people can access and understand how they find the data. We're leading into this sort of data-driven culture, helping reduce costs by understanding our processes better and reducing duplication. We're complying with our regulations, and we're creating a more agile business by understanding what we're doing with data and how we're doing it and where it sits. This all sounds wonderful, right? We're in a great place. Life is beautiful. But we're still seeing that businesses really struggle to implement data governance. So there's a few different reasons for this. So adaptation is one thing. We see a lot of businesses trying to get a framework that they've seen on the internet and copy it, paste it, put it in place, and hope that it sticks. We can't do that. Our businesses are all very different. Everybody on this call business will have a different culture, a different structure, a different decision-making process. So we can't just put one thing, put it into another, and think that it's going to work. There's going to be a mix of tactics that we need over a long time. We see a lot of interest stagnation. Quite honestly, as soon as I say the word data governance, I can see some interest go away straight away. But as we're trying to put the foundations of data governance in place, if we're not delivering value over time, then delivering value in small chunks, then people start to wonder when they are going to see the value and start to go away and look for other ways to do that. There's always hidden data risks. So trying to find out where those risks are within your organisation is very difficult, because we don't understand everything that happens in our businesses. And then finally, just lack of ownership. So if people on this call haven't experienced the sort of default position of IT or data will fix these problems, I'll be quite surprised. But a lot of the problems we encounter are organisational or are business issues, but without the ownership being shared with the business, actually they're really difficult to address. So how do we tackle some of these things? So first of all, we look at these in two different ways. So first of all, we need to look at what are those narrow slices of our business that we can engage, work with, and find bits of value that we can deliver fairly quickly. So this is about making sure we've got momentum to our chain, that we can clearly show that we are doing things and it's having an impact, while we build the things on the right, the foundations that we know that we're going to need over a long time. So these work hand in hand, but the lighthouse projects we've got on the left give us something to show that we're delivering value in smaller chunks. Those chunks could be things that we do within a few weeks, or they could be things to do up to about 6 months, but probably no further than that. So we want to be delivering on a fairly regular cadence. The other way we look at this at Oakland is by splitting governance into two sections, broad sections really. So data culture and data quality, how we tend to look. So data culture is a lot about the people element of data. So how mature are we? How educated are people, and how much do they understand about data and what we're doing, why we're doing it, why it's particularly important? And then do we have the accountability and responsibility in place to make sure we are continually improving how we use data and utilize it as an asset? We like to talk a lot about data as an asset, but actually are people treating it as an asset, or are they just creating it and not worrying about the problem until it arises at the other end when somebody else can't use it? And on the right hand side, that's where we group together things like the glossaries and dictionaries we use and how we measure data, how we see how we're improving it, and putting the right standards and policies in place to make sure people understand. But I guess when we're talking about how we achieve value from data, we tend to think more on this, starting on this left hand side, data culture. So as I said before, everybody in this room will have different businesses, and their business as a whole will be in a different place with data. And then within that business, you'll have different teams, and each of those teams at a whole will be at a different place with data as well. So there isn't ever just one way you can just put something out there to the business and culture will just magically grow and we'll all have a wonderful data culture. This is all about talking to people, finding out where those good and bad practices are, and starting to wonder how you start to align things and make them understand what good behavior is, what bad behavior is, and get people to the same level. And it's the same with data literacy. Data literacy is obviously another big topic at the moment because we're trying to implement a lot of things and people just don't understand what we're trying to do. So again, we can't just put people in training sessions, say this is what we're doing and hope that they come out of the other end and suddenly are able to pick these things up. We're going to need different tactics to approach this. There might be some nice carrot things where we give people project, education, sessions to help them improve their skills and really help upskill them. But we also know that we're going to have to use some sticks as well and tell them what the bad is and give them objectives around that so that we do start to rule out some of the bad behaviours. And comms is absolutely vital because we need to be talking about all the time. We can't create data culture if we work in our own silo away from everybody else. We need to be talking to people and making sure they understand. So the first step in that really is finding out what your current landscape is. So how do people use data across your business? Who are responsible for the processes around it? Are there any data quality processes already in play? Who needs help? What skills do they have? What executives will benefit from this? And what are the opportunities out there as well? And what the business is just trying to do, almost aside from data, what are they trying to achieve? And this is where we really need to get out and talk to people and really treat every single conversation you have as an opportunity to educate people on why you need to do data governance, data management, why it's important, and why the business needs to buy in it. And if you haven't seen it, there's a great TED talk by Simon Sinek around why, how, what, which is a really good sort of 15-minute TED talk on that sort of principle of going out with the why first. But as professionals, we all need to have our 10-second strap line that if you pass somebody in the corridor who you think is important, that you can just say, this is what we're doing, and this is why it's important to you. And also the sort of more elongated version that really gets people's buy-in once you've got their interest, because people have got their own problems, their own issues. To get them to give you their time, you need to help them understand why that's important to them. So then communication becomes really important as well. So what's the wide and regular communications that we're going to do as well to a business? So we're talking there before about talking to individuals and really understand what's happening in the business, but also what's the why that your business needs to understand about what you're doing. And we don't need to do too much too early on this, but just starting to get some interest going without creating too much excitement, because obviously if everybody suddenly wants your team of 3 or 4 people to suddenly do a million things, that creates even more problems. So just starting to tease in the kind of things you can do, just start to get people to come talk to you. And it also gives them the opportunity to learn for themselves why this is important to your business and your industry, because there's so much changing out there. There's so many buzzwords. It's hard for people that aren't immersed in this all the time. To be honest, it's hard for us that are immersed in it all the time to really appreciate what all that change means, to help and translate some of that for your business really sort of becomes useful and helpful to them. So what we get from that is an understanding of our business. So what they're doing, why they're doing it, where that culture is good, where it's bad, where we've got skills, where we don't, and sometimes where people are a bit too overconfident in what they do and actually we can help them. We can start to get an idea of who our sponsors, supporters and detractors are, and potential candidates for governance roles. So who are those people we're talking to that we go, actually, no, you're doing something really good at the moment and you've got the right mindset around this. How do I sort of pull you in to help me? This is almost like free resource, right? We can all get a little bit hold on and get some help for us. Those are our data owners and potential data stewards. We can also start that education process. So even though this might start on quite a small scale, as we start to get people understanding what we're doing, there's a hope then that those people start to talk to other people about what we're trying to do. And that will slowly just turn into a bigger thing within the business as it becomes more important to them. Probably most importantly out of all these things is the relationship building. So once we've got really good relationships where people trust us, that's when things start to happen, because they can start to see how you're trying to help them, as well as us getting into the business to help what they are trying to do. And of course, it's where we really understand what value we can add to business, because we can understand the problems, issues and opportunities they have, rather than just trying to put something in and hoping they use it. So once we've got that early education communication work going, this is when we can start to talk about ownership. Now, again, ownership will be different across every area. All our business is different. I'm going to say this every single time. You can't just copy and paste a framework from somewhere else and put it in. You're going to need to talk to people. You're going to need to engage. You're going to need to find out who those people that already have, like I say, good knowledge of data management, whether they are doing it just as an aside to their other job, or whether they are actually doing it in a very process orientated way. You can get an idea for where they are in that space and whether they can help you. So we're still doing the education and communication here. That's really important. We don't stop doing that. This is not a linear thing where we do one, then go on to the next. But this is the point where we start to try and engage and get people to more formally accept that they are going to help us on this process of data management. They are going to take responsibility for the quality of the data, for how it's inputted into their systems, for resolving the issues that come out. They are also going to help us.
Rob, that's a 5-minute call. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. They're also going to help us with the translation. So Jess mentioned about this translation between different types of wealths. The people in the business are the ones that can help us with that translation from the language we use into a language the business uses, so that people understand what we're trying to achieve and we can get our communication better. And we should just need to help them with a few things. So what are their roles and responsibilities that we're expecting them to have? We just want them to understand any of the current processes in place and work with them to make sure that the processes we're going to put in place in the future work for them as well. And again, there's a few things you might need to take into account here in your businesses. Some businesses, if there's a change to somebody's roles and responsibility, you might need to go through your HR. It might be unions as well you might need to engage with. So it's really important that they understand the benefit of doing this to them and to the business, so that this is not something that's being done to them, something that's been put on them. Actually, they are benefiting as well. So here we start to get that business accountability and responsibility for data. So at this point now, they are going to have some accountability for resolving the issues. It's not just a tech or a data thing. These people should be really good advocates for what we're doing and help spread that the digital data message of the why. Why are we doing this? As I said, hopefully they're going to translate things, our data artifact, into a business language so it's more understood. And we're going to get a team of people that can help us resolve issues. This is also really good for starting to build this data culture and literacy, because these are more advocates that are in the business telling people why we're doing things as we're doing, and they're going to be helping people improve the data themselves so that their literacy comes up with it. So once we've got all our people bit in place, that's really when we can start really refining our glossaries, dictionaries, measurement and improvement. It's not to say we can't do some of this stuff before we've got people in place. It's just the people will help make sure this lands well with the business, that our policies will be readable for the business, that our glossaries and dictionaries make sense, again, rather than it just being something that lands on. And they will also help sure they make those documents are used, are kept as dynamic documents, and don't just become something that sits on an internet, gathers virtual dust, and is never seen until the next review date where we say, yeah, that's okay, and do nothing with it. These things have got to be things that help drive that better engagement with data. Also, just point out again, this is not linear. You just do not just go left to right. As I said, we're going to be working in the lighthouse. We're going to be delivering something in a process or for a function. We're going to be doing it quite quick, and then taking some of the work that comes out of that and using that for our foundation. So we're going to be moving all over these topics quite a lot, but it's the people aspect is the one we think is most important. Just to summarise that really, this approach avoids wasted tech spend, because you don't just put things in place and hope they're used. We're going to put them in place with people ready to use them. We're going to identify our value nice and early and adapt what we're doing to the business culture as well. It's not just about data culture, it's about how we make sure this fits into a business culture. We're going to help with our business buy-in. We're going to expand our team at no additional cost. I asterisk this just because some business might want to pay people more for doing these roles, or they might want to put other roles in. But we've got a bigger team now, which is great, and it helps you as individuals do your job. And we start to create this culture, literacy and decision making around data that might not have existed, and make it more of a uniform process rather than having that sort of variation between different business teams. So I think we're bang on time there. It's really good. So thank you very much for your time, and any questions?
Fantastic, Rob. That was really, really interesting. And I love the point about the why. I also like Simon Sinek and the stuff he does. But I think it resonates because, you know, we've talked previously in this conference about humans taking the path of least resistance. And I think sometimes it is easy for organizations and businesses just to fall into doing whatever they think needs to be done without actually the why. And you mentioned about data governance and tailoring it to the organization rather than taking it off the shelf. We want simple answers, right, to problems that are often not simple. So it was really interesting. I think there was a really nice comment, and I think we all agree your presentation is really well designed.
Thank you.
So kudos and points for that as well. Another point about the data governance, I think, that was mentioned in the chat as you were going through is it was from Salar, and you know, saying that, you know, data governance, he was essentially saying data governance needs to be considered at a high level within the business, you know, and I think that's true. I think we have, there's like chief technical officers sometimes who maybe know data, maybe not, chief information officers, which may be more IT focused, or are they information focused? Some companies do have chief data officers and things like that, right? So I guess that's an important point of it too, right? Would you agree? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. That exec sponsorship is absolutely vital. I think probably touched on it in the people bit and in this strategy part of aligning it to what the business is trying to do. I honestly think, in my experience, there is no right or wrong answer for who that person is. Obviously, the chief data officer, if we're lucky enough to have one, tends to be a good one. I've seen brilliant CTIOs do it because they do understand data, and I've seen some CTIOs that don't, because they understand data as something they store and move around, not as something to be utilized by the business. This is why those conversations with people are so important, because what you're trying to elicit are people that, even if they don't understand it at this point in time, will be passionate about it enough to support you in what you're doing and see how they can utilize it. And so it could be anyone. It could be a chief marketing officer, it could be a risk officer. It just depends who can see the business value of what you're trying to achieve and support you in those conversations, like I say, because some of these things, those foundation pieces, will take a long time to do. And let's face it, in a way, will never get done, because we are always changing as businesses. We are always shifting. We always need to do different things. So that's why this lighthouse concept of doing things in short bursts and delivering value short bursts is important. But you're exactly right. You do need someone then to showcase that, so that you're not just a data governance management team that are just taking orders, sat in the background and just seen as a cost to people. They need to understand the value out of that.
So is data governance, which I think is just Cosmo said in the chat, has obviously gained a lot more attention recently across industries, I think. Is that the last bastion, or one of the last bastions of where the humans will go? Because obviously culture is something that arises. Culture is not something you can necessarily force. And that kind of also feeds into a question that Salar was bringing up, which was talking about data culture generally. And then, I guess he's asking what data culture do you tackle first? I think he's saying that there's probably multiple data cultures. How do you foster an optimal culture, and how do you do that? It's not an easy question, perhaps.
It's not an easy thing to do, definitely, and it depends. This is what I was saying. It all depends on your business and what you're trying to achieve. Okay, there might be areas where, quite honestly, you don't need to have a massive data culture, because the impact of the decisions they are making and the data they have available is just not enough to make it worth your while spending a lot of time in that area. If you've got areas that should be utilizing data because they can make massive decisions, that a 1% switch in something leads to a big impact, then you absolutely should be focusing your attention on those areas. But yes, it's really difficult to do, and I think this is why I must admit I'm a little skeptical about the whole data culture thing. It's culture, it's business culture, it's how you make your decisions as a business. So it's what you are working on is how the business utilize what data is available to them as part of that decision making. And you're not going to replace the years and years of experience that people that have built up just by giving them a report. That's not how this works. But if you can show them how that might fit into the decision making process they have, that's what we're talking about, really, just layering in data into the culture of the business.
So maybe perhaps rather than talking so much about data culture, because as you say, culture is kind of culture and can't really be separated from anything else. It's just a quick point before I move on to another question, but should we talk more about data literacy? So enabling people to better understand data and the technologies and everything like that's available?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I think, and this is, we all get hung up on words, data literacy, data fluency, all this stuff. I think there's lots of different elements to this. There's understanding what is happening in the world. Okay, how everything we are doing on our mobile phones, our tablets, our computers, everything we do is changing the data that is available. And that's what companies are starting to use. And that's what we see the AI space growing massively on, because there's just more available to them and more different techniques of utilizing that. So that's one aspect. Then you've got you as an industry. What's happening in your industry? What's changing that's affecting you? What are different people doing that actually you might be able to take advantage of? So this is all quite high level stuff. But then coming down to the individual, what can they do? What skills are they going to need to learn to stay relevant in the future? What's going to help them bring more value to the business? So there's so many different plans of attack for that. And this is why it comes down to your business. No one can tell you what is right for your business. You're going to have to go out and find out where people are on that journey and then help them from that point to understand how they can add value with data.
Absolutely. And it's something actually, we have a panel session this afternoon talking about data management in the context of different industries. And if we've had time with that, I think we will veer a little bit onto skills. We talked a little bit about what skills previously in the conference. Just a quick question here from Alan. You talked about different industries just there. In your experience, what industries are the most engaged with data management generally?
So different industries for different reasons, I think. So the one that springs to mind straight away is finance, but that's regulation. There's so much regulation out there that they absolutely they have to sort it out, because otherwise there's big reputational and financial risks to them of getting it wrong. So finance are generally quite ahead. There's a lot of industries, let's say pure online, where they are engaged in certain parts of it really well. So that online journey parts, so for retailers, things like that. But even then, I wouldn't say the whole industry is. There are certain people that do it brilliantly. There are certain people that are making money despite of not doing it brilliantly, and are just starting to realise the potential in that. I think there's some industries that are behind. So insurance generally are quite a long way behind on that curve, but the regulation is starting to force them in that direction now. And things like the price. So this year in the UK, we had a fair pricing thing where you couldn't price differently for your existing customers, for your new customers, and that changed how you price totally. So the data they needed over a period, with COVID disrupting everything, was suddenly really difficult. And you've seen certain insurance companies really struggle from things like that as well. So banking is the one that springs to mind, but I think there's pockets of people that are doing it really well within certain industries that are kind of leading the way in other places.
It's very interesting, because it leads on to a question and sort of point, I guess, that Jess was making in the question as well, essentially about industries being forced to adapt. And it's true. It's like it's that Newton's third law of motion: an object will stay at rest until an equal opposite force acts upon it. Right? It's getting over the inertia, and it's not until he's talking about in the oil and gas industry, safety culture was a requirement. I mean, Piper Alpha, blew up, right? So we needed to change. We needed to do something. We can't be killing people, for example, right? Or in banking, yes, they have a regulatory reason for doing that, and we've seen that in the UK with big changes in the energy sector with the NSTA and regulation. And it really does, governments are kind of key to this. I think